Hi, my name is Graham Waters. I'm president of the Auckland Rose Society, and in conjunction with Kings today, we'd like to give you some tips on how to look after your roses during the winter. I've been growing roses now for 35 years in Auckland, and there's a certain degree of satisfaction of being able to pick a lovely fragrant rose with beautiful colours to give to your friends, or indeed have them in a vase in your house. Roses are easy to look after, but the care and attention you give them during the winter period will reflect on how they perform in the summer when your first blooms open. Always choose a fine day for pruning your roses, the reason being that when you've made a cut on the rose, if there's dampness or moisture around, it will get in and possibly cause disease. Start your pruning, make sure you've got a good quality, strong pair of secateurs with a very, very sharp blade. That blade then comes down on this part and you'll get a clean cut of your rose. When you've pruned your rose bush, take some methylated spirits or some cleaning fluid and wipe them across the blade of your secateurs. This will stop the spread of disease or infection going from one bush to another bush. The reason we prune roses is to keep them in good shape, keep them healthy and keep them in vigorous growth. If we don't prune them, they're not going to die, and if you over prune them, they're not going to die. But to get the best out of them, it needs to be done properly. No matter how well you look after your roses, you will always get something called dieback. This is starting to die back down the stem. So what I'm going to do is cut this off, and at the same time there's another piece here that's also crossing over. And this isn't always an easy job, as you can see. Sometimes it's a job for the secateurs, and sometimes it's a job for the saw. And I think on this one I'll take the saw to it. And you can see from that there's been some dieback where you've got that brown across there. So this happens at any time of the year, and it's not just when you prune them. Anytime you see some dieback, it's the time to take it out. Cut these off as near to the base as you possibly can. Try not to leave a stump up there. Get a wire brush and give it a vigorous brush all around the crown of that rose, and that will encourage new growth to come up. I say encourage, it's not guaranteed, but it certainly can help. So wire brush, and don't be gentle on it, give it a good hard rub. Here we have another rose bush. It's not a particularly strong looking one, but I'm going to give it another chance, and I'm going to take this one off to down here, and I'll show you why. We've got some dieback going down here, and that goes down as far as there, but then over here we've got some more dieback. And as you can see there where I've cut it, it's nice and green, but if I cut it there, you'd see the brown in there, and that's that dieback going back down the rose bush. We're now going to prune the rose to get the best we can out of it for the summer period. And to do that, we're looking at 4 to 6 strong stems coming up from the rose bush, cutting out the spindly pieces, and then cutting about 30 centimetres up from the rose base at an angle of 45 degrees with an outward facing bud. This rose bush has been in the ground just over a year, and in its first year of growth it made some good strong stems coming up. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're the 4 stems that I'll be leaving. I'll be taking out the other growth that is a bit spindly and not doing very much. So my first cut will be on this one. Nice clean cut, no dieback, and then I'm going to take this one out. I've now got 4 strong canes, and what I'll be looking at is an outward facing bud. We don't want the centre of the bush to become crowded. So about 30 centimetres up from the base, angling at 45 degrees, and make that cut just there. And finally this one over here, outward facing bud, 45 degrees. Now sometimes you'll get a situation where you've got two shoots very, very close together, and they're going to get closer together. What you can then do is take a piece of twig or a piece of rose and cut it into a Y shape and cut it down to the right size, and then you can put that between your two rose pieces to keep them separate so they don't cross over to one another. So here we are in the time of the year when we need to get the spray and the winter spray organised so that we come into the summer with the least amount of problems with our rose bushes. What we'll often get on rose bushes, no matter how often you spray them, is something called rose scale. It's these little white pieces that grow up. If it's a slight infestation as it is here, you could mix up a little bit of lime sulphur and just rub it so you get those scale bits off. And that should fix the problem. If it's a bad problem and you have a lot of roses, mix up some lime sulphur and give them a good spray. Having done that, beware that lime sulphur had a smell about rotten eggs to it. It will stain your weatherboard and it will defoliate your rose bush. Wait for 3 weeks before you apply a copper spray. You need to do that because you get a bad reaction between the two sprays if you don't. From mid-June onwards, you can start spraying with copper oxychloride. That's the bluey green powder that you mix up into a slurry before adding water and also adding some conker oil. This will help to control mites, insect and black spot disease as you're going into spring and summer. Then from September onwards, probably using a normal rose spray. Having dealt with the spraying and the pruning of roses, the next thing is to think about feeding them so that you get good growth in the summer. Start off by feeding them in late August or September with blood and bone, a good sized handful sprinkled around the drip line of your rose. That'll get things moving over the next 6 weeks. And then in October, start using one of the rose fertilizers, and that will strengthen your whole plant up going into summer when the buds start to form. We hope you've learned something today about caring for your roses. There are a lot more to learn about roses, so on that basis we encourage you to join the Auckland Rose Society. Kings now have in store a good supply of new roses. If for any reason there's a particular rose that they don't have in stock for you, they will do their best to get one in. So on behalf of Kings and the Auckland Rose Society, thank you and happy gardening.